Welcome back. Now, the 45th SADC Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government has just concluded in Antananarivo, Madagascar. The summit addressed critical issues affecting the region, ranging from food insecurity and industrialization to youth empowerment, intra-SADC trade, and recent U.S. tariffs impacting African nations. Now, to give us a roundup of the outcomes and what they mean for Namibia and the region, we're joined by Presidential Press Secretary Jonas Mbambo. Good evening and welcome.
Very good evening to you, Nina.
Summit as fruitful, successful. So perhaps just give us a sort of an overview of the key highlights and decisions that came from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason why I described it in that manner was that the topics that were tackled, it was not just big talk, but it was more of the leaders being more realistic about what needs to be done. Of course, we know what's going on in the world. You know that bigger economies are flexing their muscle in terms of how trade should be handled. Case in point, the U.S. tariffs. We've seen Lesotho being hit with 50%, South Africa being hit with 1%. Namibia has not been spared as well. So they're talking about industrialization, opportunities for youth employment. We keep on saying that the youth is the future, but the youth is also getting frustrated. The youth doesn't want to be given false hope. So how can we, as SADC leaders, what's the discussion? How can we bring about meaningful change, practical change in ensuring that we have food, ensuring that our young people have opportunities, and that we add value to what we have on the continent. So the vibe, if I may put it that way, was one of unity and getting things done as soon as possible.
Yeah. Food insecurity was also high on the agenda, major concern, and over 60 million SADC citizens are affected by this. So what concrete steps can you share with us that the leaders, committed to in tackling this urgent crisis?
You know, as I was driving to NBC, preparing for the interview, mentally, I thought to myself, I thought about that figure actually, 60 million. I thought, that's huge. And I thought to myself, I woke up this morning not wanting to have breakfast. I chose not to have breakfast, but then there are people who didn't have breakfast because they don't have food to eat. So that's how fortunate some of us are, if I can put that in context of, this is not just a figure. These are people that do not have access to not only food, but nutrition-rich food. Because having access to food is one thing, but having access to a balanced diet, having access to food that ensures that you're getting all those nutrients in is another thing. So they agreed to invest more in climate-smart farming. As we know, climate change is a big problem, and improve food sharing across borders and build stronger early warning systems for droughts and floods. So the message from the SADC leaders is that no SADC country should go hungry or should try to tackle this problem by itself. So once again, it goes back to being a united front to seeing how we can tackle these problems collectively.
Yeah. Also at the 45th Ordinary Summit, our President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah delivered her maiden speech.
Yeah.
What were the central points to her message, Jonas, and how was it received?
Her first address, as president was quite a sight. She received a warm applause from those in attendance. The delegates spoke very highly, of her, and I realized then, in case people didn't realize, Namibia is a big deal in multilateral organizations. Wherever you go and you have that Namibian flag with you, which I didn't bring today, people really look to you with respect. It's because leaders have for years been very principled in their stance on whatever issues are being discussed. But coming back to what was very important in her speech, of course, the NDP6 has been very pivotal alongside the SWAPO Manifesto of 2024 about what needs to be done to accelerate economic growth and bring about, shared prosperity. It was about industrialization, adding value to our raw materials, food security. How do we get away from traditional agricultural methods to modernize agriculture to ensure that our methods are more resilient and that we can look inward as opposed to relying on imports and help from outside. So that was really, really central in her speech. But it was once again also, the the aspect of ensuring that young people are given opportunities, because she has faith. If you've seen her discussions, her interviews, you would have noticed that she's very youth-centric. She wants to see young people thrive. And one thing that many people, don't understand is that don't give young people false hope. And that's what the president is not trying to do. You know, she's been criticized about being unrealistic in NDP 6, but what should we do then? Should we just sit back and, fold our arms and let it play out? At least let's try. But we must not also beat up ourselves in terms of saying that we haven't achieved anything as a country. 30 years ago, we didn't have our own School of Medicine. 30 years ago, we were not producing our own engineers. So there has been progress in some certain areas. Of course, a lot of work still lies ahead. But the bottom line was food security, adding value to our commodities and not exporting them raw. And of course, Namibia has always been big on peace and security. We know what's going on in the eastern DRC, where people are being displaced, women and children are dying, and they're unfortunately the casualties of war. So they're spilling over into neighboring countries, and DRC is in our neighborhood. And when your neighbor's house is on fire, you cannot just neglect that, because that fire might catch on you as well. So they were trying hard, to put the message out there that this is our collective problem. We need to get involved as SADC. And last but not least, the issue of Western Sahara, which Namibia has always stood by in terms of our foreign policy, was also mentioned, and it was endorsed later on by the SADC leaders in attendance in the communique, because Namibia understands what it means to be oppressed. We were economically exploited, socially degraded, and politically oppressed by the apartheid regime of South Africa. And we understand how it feels not to have power, to be, to self-determine your future. So that was, those were the highlights of her speech.
Two of the pointers that you mentioned, which is industrialization and value addition to our raw materials, these are all sort of remain reoccurring themes when it comes to SADC gatherings. So what specific progress, Jonas, or commitments were made this time around to move from policy to implementation? Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Turning raw materials into finished goods is something that has been a recurring theme. But leaders this time around have made commitments, at least, by saying, look, let's work together. And the layman on the street would look at the speeches that are being delivered and say, well, those are just speeches, and rightfully so. So I think the proof will be in the pudding, as they say, for those issues to come forth, on whether it will now become, to move from theory to practicability. But it's all a matter of time. One can't really say, but leaders have really expressed their desire to work together to change the status quo.
I understand that the summit also discussed the SADC Development Fund. So where do things stand with this initiative, and what difference will it make once it's operationalized?
Yeah, the Development Fund is almost off the drawing board, but at least now leaders have nailed down on how it will be structured. And the beautiful thing is, once this thing, the fund starts gaining traction and countries contribute. And that's also, I think, one of the issues that also need to be underlined or stressed going forward. Is it's one thing to develop a financing vehicle, but it's another thing to maintain it. How many countries are in the long run willing, to put money into the development fund. And there's a saying that goes that, that the one who pays the piper calls the tune. Whoever gives you money decides, what the tone will be, what the agenda will be. And that is very dangerous in the long term. So SADC in the long term is looking at, being sustaining, financially, so we can finance our own project, hence, dictating our own agenda.
Right at the beginning of our discussion, to the United States and these tariffs that they've sort of hit the region with, Namibia, of course, not being exempt from it, and a unified regional response to the recent tariffs was one of the resolutions, or of the resolutions. So how significant is this step? What does it mean for SADC's positioning in global trade negotiation? Yeah,
once again, coming back to the unity is strength principle, leaders agreed that fighting this monster of a problem will not work if we do it ourselves. If you've ever watched hunter-gatherers going to hunt, I'm big on National Geographic, so I use a lot of examples. You can't bring down an elephant by yourself, but if you're many as small as you are, your efforts combined, your resources combined, pulled together, can really, really make a difference. So going forward, we can expect solid outcomes to how they will unite as as SADC countries to speak as a united front to help address the problem or the issue of tariffs. And also at the same time, it's maybe also an opportunity for us to look inward to see how much trade we can have amongst ourselves. We know that the African Free Trade Continental areas are also available, but how much effort are we putting in ensuring that I get, when I walk into the store, I get coffee from, let's say, from Kenya,
yes.
or Uganda.
Yes.
The best chocolate comes from Belgium, Switzerland, and what's the other country? Germany. But yet none of them have cocoa farms. All of that comes from West Africa. How comes it that I don't have Ivorian chocolate on the shelf? So those are simple things that we know that I think we need to start thinking about. And start wondering, but how does cocoa go all the way to Switzerland and then comes back to us? And I think that applies to many other raw materials as well. So I think it also presents an opportunity for us to trade, amongst ourselves and see how far that goes, instead of living on a prayer and hoping that, the powers that be would have a change of heart soon.
Well, that's going to be an interesting development to keep our eyes on, definitely coming together against those, tariffs. Finally, just looking ahead, Jonas, what should, the citizens of SADC and Namibia, expect as tangible outcomes from the summit, either in the short or medium term?
Yeah, I was thinking about how I was going to answer that question. And I said, look, I'm not a gypsy fortune teller. I'm not a prophet of any kind. But going back to what I said about speeches are just speeches until people start seeing action. Like the PM would say, we want to see dust. That will be the indicator. That will be the proof in the pudding when these things, go from speeches, to projects, from speeches to people being financed, having access to opportunities. Young people, what young people need right now, I think across the region, not only Namibia, is access to opportunity. They're not saying government must give us a job. I have the ability to give other people, jobs as well. But all I need is the finance to start up something, and that's what they're asking for. Yeah. Just a little push, just a little opportunity for us to really live up to our true potential. But and as far as what they can expect, it's going to be just a matter of time. I don't want to preempt or say something and someone's going to hold me like, yeah, but you said no. I didn't say that. But obviously, I think what we want is our leaders to really, really get the ball rolling. Time is not on our side, and time waits for no man. So, yeah.
Mr. Jonas Mbambo, it's always lovely having you with us.
Always been a great pleasure being here. It feels weird. I usually ask the questions, but did a fantastic job making me feel comfortable. Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Much obliged.
Well, that was Press Secretary Mr. Jonas Mbambo speaking to us about the 45th SADC Ordinary Summit, heads of state and government that had concluded in Madagascar, and just giving us a roundup of what was dissected and what lies ahead. We'll be back right after this brief break. Stay with us.